what was unusual about this Alice Springs Steiner School was that it was a Steiner school started by parents, whereas the usual way is for teachers to start the school. So this gave a huge responsibility and workload to the committee, of which you were the first chairman. So what do you remember about those early committee meetings?
Well, first of all, I believe we were blithely unaware that most of the schools were started by teachers, and we assumed they were started by parents. So we didn't complain too much. It was just that we were juggling a really big idea with really limited resources. Fundraising was a real drag. We'd be over the moon if we fundraised $300 in a big event, and it was just small money in the starting up of a school.
In your memory, was there a lot of tension there, or was it just driven, hope driven, optimism driven in
I
terms
think there
of?
was more optimism. I think the tension started to come when we got the reality bites, when we realized that, well, not so much we realized, we did get ourselves in a bit too deep. We were struggling to maintain an organisation that didn't have the resources to do it properly. And that was later on, once the school was started and we were employing people. So we had those layers of responsibility. And, as to whether the school could afford the staffing that we had became a real point of contention. That was my first memory of real conflict or tension within the organisation. But up till then, I just thought we were a happy crew. We were powering on, and we were determined that we were going to succeed in this.
After you were chairman for those first couple of years, as I recall, you were heavily involved in the process of trying to find a place for the school. Of course, that began right at the beginning, while you were chairman. So maybe if
Yeah.
you could talk a little bit about that.
Use of the premises behind the Araluen Arts Centre, which is on the Araluen land. The building was called the Folk Cottage because it was a home of the Alice Springs Folk Club while it existed, was offered by the current CEO of Araluen, and we made ourselves fairly comfortable there. We did some work, and then eventually we were given another building to use on that site as well. And the tension really started because it was, we had to realise the fact we weren't going to continue a whole school with those resources, and B, Araluen started making noises about wanting the buildings back, which is not unreasonable, even if we thought it was a bit at the time. So then there was a hunt, and we looked at all sorts of places to start that school. We spent time in the Boy Scouts Hall. We spent time at a private residence. And I believe, although my children didn't do it, we were also even at a motel for a while. It was complicated by the fact it was really difficult to find land. The government, in the background, the government saying, yeah, we'll fund you buildings, but you have to have freehold land. And even though Alice Springs is in a vast amount of land, there's not a lot of freehold land. And so the hunt was on for a freehold land site. I got the feeling there was a couple, but only one really lent itself to thinking about a school. And we thought it was pretty hunky-dory at the time, and that was a freehold site off Currajong Drive. And so the Lands and Building Committee, which was, I believe I was the chair of that, and it was quite an enthusiastic small bunch of people involved in that. We had a good look at the site, and I don't think we ever thought it was perfect, but it had a beautiful aesthetic to it nonetheless. It just wasn't very big. And so we pushed on with the acquisition of that site, and I believe it was government freehold, and we will look like we were going to be able to get hold of that block of land, to the point where we actually started commissioning an architect to do a master plan for the site. And those drawings still exist on that site. But to continue the story, what happened that really threw a spanner in the works of that was the native title decision was made, whereby Aboriginal land custodians were actually granted native title to their land on government land. We thought that was okay to start with because, yes, it was a freehold block, but there was a small amount of non-freehold land over the driveway into that site, and that meant that we had the land but no driveway into it. So that was an interesting development at that stage. And that kind of stopped everything. And then I do also remember someone who stay unnamed in part because I'm not sure I remember it's the right person, saying, well, that land was just never really suitable. It's not big enough. It's not big enough for expansion if you want to go into a high school, and you're best rid of it anyway. So we were back to scratch.